was late January when the New York Times dropped this from Justice Department reporter Katie Benner. The headline is, "Trump and Justice Department lawyer said to have plotted to oust acting attorney general." That initial report in the Times in January prompted an 8-month investigation by the Judiciary Committee in the Senate into Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and his efforts to use the Justice Department as a tool for doing so. That investigation produced today's jaw-dropping report and hundreds of pages of supporting material, a report that found that the Justice Department was both used as a tool in Trump's attempted coup and was ultimately also a force to stop it. The news of that report was broken naturally late last night by Katie Benner, a New York Times Justice Department reporter who has been crushing this story since before day one. Ms. Benner, thank you again for making time to be here and understand this reporting. It remains one of the most amazing stories of our time.
Thanks for having me.
In terms of this interim report by the Judiciary Committee, how far along should we see them in terms of what they are trying to figure out, what materials they want access to, and what they still want to get?
I'm not really a sports person, but from what I know about baseball, I would say we're in the 3rd or 4th inning. They still really want to speak with Jeff Clark, for example, who is somebody who has not responded to any of their requests. And as you can see from this report, we have a really full picture of what the experience was like on the Justice Department side, how they felt getting these requests from the White House to help upend the results of the election. But what their testimony, their notes, their extensive handwritten notes, emails, and other documents show is that they were never quite sure what was going on at the White House. They were never quite sure exactly who was coming up with what felt to them like scheme after scheme and plot after plot to upend the election. They had a sense that it might include, for example, Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. They had a sense that he had asked Jeff Clark to come to the White House to help with legal issues and to be a voice for the Justice Department. But they were never really sure exactly what was going on. So I think the committee will have to start interviewing other witnesses, including witnesses from the White House side, to get a complete picture.
We just spoke with Sheldon Whitehouse, who's on the committee, and he raised the provocative prospect that Jeff Clark, who is so in the bullseye of this report and who, in fact, has been referred for potential discipline to the D.C. bar because of what the committee's discovered about him thus far. So Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse, just raised the prospect that Mr. Clark might not have been sort of intellectually up to the task that he was trying to pull off here, that he might have been sort of put up to it, that this was an area of law that he didn't know anything about, that he may have been essentially a vessel for other people who were trying to use him and his position to get this done. Does that resonate at all with what you've reported thus far in this story?
Well, you certainly get that sense if you read the transcripts from former acting attorney Jeff Rosen and his deputy, Rich Donahue. You definitely get the sense that they were always wondering, is there somebody behind Jeff Clark? They would have these contentious conversations with him and then come back wondering who is helping him in these efforts and where are these legal theories coming from? Certainly that is the sense you get.
Wow. In terms of what is likely to happen next here, I'm also struck, Katie, by the fact that there seems to be pretty good documentation of how senior Justice Department officials did try to help Trump in what he was doing. Beyond Clark, there was William Barr, for example, not only personally telling U.S. attorneys to make it their first priority to investigate some of these outlandish claims, but like telling the FBI to interview specific witnesses. The Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, Richard Donahue, getting involved personally to try to push this stuff out to federal prosecutors' offices. Is that going to be seen as a problem in the Justice Department going forward?
Well, I think that there are certainly calls by former Justice Department employees and some current employees that one of the reasons to do a full top-to-bottom review of what happened in the Justice Department during the Trump era is to figure out how to stop this from happening again. Now, so far, Merrick Garland has rejected that idea. He does not seem on board with that kind of review. But what we did see is that there was certainly this sense of the frog being boiled, slowly boiled alive. I only report on legal matters and the facts, but again, from these interviews, you can really sort of see a situation where employees and top officials at the Justice Department were thinking to themselves, I will just do this one more thing. I will just comply with this president's request for an investigation just so I can say that we did it and check the box and get him off my back, without really understanding how that would encourage him and abet him, how it would create this sort of psychological roadmap by which he believes that he can continue to push the Justice Department further and further and further in these investigations, to not just do them, but to suddenly publicly announce them in a way that would undermine the results of the investigation, undermine the credibility of the election, and, as these witnesses said, impair democracy. So you get to a point where only the most extreme things can force officials to act.
Katie Benner, New York Times Justice Department reporter, again, who has led the country from before day one in terms of breaking this story. Thank you for your time tonight. As you say, third or fourth inning and a long way to go. But this is a fascinating day, Katie. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.